Welcome to episode 121 of the Toadstool Boardroom for the week of January 30th, 2025. I'm Logan Plant, joined just this week by Justin Korais. Hey, Justin.
What's up, Logan?
Chris Schreiber's off doing extra things this week, so Justin and I are holding down the fort here in the boardroom, and we're going to take kind of a chill episode this week. We're going to go through our huge backlog of EGAD's emails, including, finally, I think I even teased this before and we still didn't get to it, what's a game that instantly transports you to days of Thanksgiving past, just so you can see that we've got quite the pileup of emails to get to. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about games that we are playing right now on Nintendo Switch, or maybe some retro Nintendo consoles. And we're going to start right now. There's maybe a Nintendo Direct next week, Justin.
Maybe.
That is what the folks are saying, and it makes sense. I think we've been expecting one for February for Switch 1 specifically. I wasn't sure they were going to do an actual Direct. I'm still not convinced. I just think there was going to be a Twitter flood of announcements of just like when they announced Paper Mario the Origami King in 2020 just on Twitter, and that was it. I was expecting
a weird
stuff
time.
like that. Yeah, but it was a really bizarre time. But it's sounding like there could be a Direct next week. That's what people seem to think. I'm not here to guess one way or the other. But Justin, we were chatting a little bit before the show. It's kind of weird, right? They've already let the cat out of the bag of when we're going to hear more about Switch 2 on April 2nd. So how much hype could an event like this really have?
Yeah, I think that's the big question. I believe the rumblings that we're hearing. I don't have any insider information on this, so I'm not whoever the leaker of the week is. But, you know, the people who are talking about it are people who tend to be right about these things. Like, there's enough rumblings. Again, we kind of talked about that a little bit previously, that I think it's got some legs. And the time of the year wise, we've seen the Direct around the time of the year in the past anyway. But yeah, when the end is coming, it's really hard to necessarily feel invested in the next round of stuff. So it's a little awkward. It just is. And I'm all for new stuff being announced. I'm all for new cool stuff to play, but it is going to be weird. And I'm definitely going to have depending on when stuff comes out, since we already know that there's at least some form of potential backwards compatibility, I think I, like a lot of folks, will be wondering, hey, this thing is coming out. Should I just wait?
Yeah, should I just wait for this mystery apparent performance boost everyone's just convinced is going to be a thing that I'm not sold on yet? Yeah. I'm not sold that Switch 2 is going to naturally boost games with uncapped frame rates or whatever. I'm not that convinced that it won't just be emulating a Switch 1 like they've always done with backwards compatibility. So we'll see. But anyways, that's a conversation for a Switch 2 episode. I disagree. I don't think it's going to be awkward. I think that it's going to be actually kind of an awesome Nintendo Direct if it does happen. Because I think it's the Metroid Prime 4 Direct. I think it's the big Metroid overview trailer, 5 minutes, here's what this game is, and here's a release date, and it's out in 3 months. I think that's what it is going to be. I think Nintendo's never had a Direct this generation that's fully labeled a Nintendo Direct. There's partner showcases, there's specific game ones, there's indie ones, but when they just call it a Nintendo Direct, they always end with something big. They have to. I feel like that's just, it's a code internally. They're not going to roll out that branding if they don't have something to justify it. I think it's the Metroid Direct because, as you know, I think Metroid Prime 4 is a Switch 1 game, period, end of story. And I think that this is the Direct where they tell us it's coming out in May. And I think it's coming out before the Switch 2 does as the big swan song to this thing. So people pay attention to it, and then they can drum up the interest again when Switch 2 comes out. Maybe they patch it. Maybe it gets its own dedicated SKU there. But at launch, I think this thing's going to be alone on Switch 1. So I think that'll be there. I think that you could have that Kirby Planet Robobot remaster that's been floating around will show up. Kirby, it's been too long since he's reared his adorable head, and I think that he'll show up here. And then maybe like a surprise, like a Rhythm Heaven I've been feeling is coming this year. I think that could be just like a shadow drop even. Hey, this is out today. It's digital only. Rhythm Heaven is back. They did a very similar thing on 3DS. I think it's weird we haven't seen that franchise yet. I think they like it. So I think this could be a decent show given the circumstances, and I hope it does happen. I'm down for one more Nintendo Direct that just focuses entirely on Switch 1.
Yeah. To me, though, that's part of what makes it awkward. So let's say you're right. let's say they talk about Metroid Prime 4, do their big blowout, give us the smooth VO with the feature list. That sounds great to me, but I'm literally one of those people that will be like, okay, if it comes out in 3 months, I don't know when the Switch 2 is out. I don't know if I'm going to buy it right now. And like, I'm certainly the type that like, even if I know even if we know that it'll be playable on both, and even if we know that if I buy it on the Switch, for whatever reason, they're like, yeah, and you can just import it to the next one, you can play it. If I know that there's a chance that like my gameplay experience will just be superior by waiting for the Switch 2, or even if I don't know that it won't, if that makes sense, I'm gonna feel the tug and the inclination to just wait. That's like, we've seen their their generation spanning titles before, and like there was I had to wait a little bit to play through Breath of the Wild, even though I could have downloaded it on my Wii U, because I was waiting till I was going to get the Switch, even though like the Switch performance wasn't that much better. Like, and I know I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, it's you're right. I guess more people just care about that than I do. If they tell me it's out in May on Switch 1, I'm there day one. Can't wait. Sign me up. But yeah, there are people who care about that. Which is, yeah, no, I don't think so. I haven't played 2 and 3. I don't think I'm going for it on Prime 4. I haven't finished those 2, so I wouldn't want to do that. But anyways,
my copy of Trilogy.
Oh man, I hate the controls on 2 on GameCube, and I hate the motion controls on Trilogy. I just need those 2 games to get remastered. Yeah. That's what I'm just desperately waiting for.
Well, but, no, go for it. Okay,
I was going to say, like, you go. I'm stepping back.
All right, I'm going to go. Well, and because you did mention sort of like broader subject, like in the direct, about like remakes and updates, and I definitely think that, because they haven't said this is well, they haven't announced anything yet, so we don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to be, if there is one, it doesn't seem like it's going to be necessarily a single title direct. It does seem like a Nintendo direct where they're going to cover multiple things. So this is many years in a row where it comes with it, like a really cool, sometimes surprising remake or remaster or something like that.
Yes.
We had Metroid Prime 1 already. Wouldn't be a terrible idea to give folks a chance to play 2 and 3 before 4 comes out.
So I'm so torn on that.
But like, especially if they can make them a little bit better. Like, and honestly, like 3 is actually really good. It's just you have to motion control it. Which, and even at the time, the motion controls were good. But now it's like, in hindsight, okay, that wasn't actually good. That was just better motion controls than we were used to. And like 2 has its warts, in particular, like early game when you have to go in the dark world and like the air is spicy is pretty annoying. But like, we don't know how much it'll tie into the story of those games, but I would love to see those like be available, and it would be extremely. There's some very clear precedent for that being a possibility here.
Yeah, for sure there is. It's just when I think about Metroid, and do you want to kind of oversaturate a series that already doesn't sell that well with 2 and 3? I don't know. I could see them choosing either way, especially when I think that definitively, I don't know how many people you would find that disagree that 1 is the best of the Metroid Primes.
Yeah.
I think almost everybody feels that way. It already got an amazing remaster on Switch. I don't see 2 and 3 getting a treatment to that level. I see that more akin to something like Pikmin 1 and 2, which were just very, very cheap, easy, one and done remasters. And is there interest for that? Do you want to... They're great games, right? From what I know, they're great games. But do you want to almost sour people on Metroid with 2 remasters of 2 lesser games and a remaster of a lesser quality? And I just don't know if they would choose to do that ahead of Prime 4, which feels really, really important. So I don't know. I could see it going either way. But even regardless if 2 and 3 are there, I think 4 will be there. And then I think third-party front, you've got stuff like Dragon Quest 1 and 2, HD remake following up on 3 from last year. We're waiting to hear a release date for Professor Layton in the New World of Steam. There's stuff to fill a 40-minute presentation. Chuck in a Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition trailer, throw in an NSO update. We're starting to build the runtime to 40 minutes already with the stuff we've mentioned, so... I think it could happen. It won't be the biggest knock your socks off, oh my god, Nintendo Direct. That's going to be in April. But it could still be a nice show, and I think round out Switch 1's life nicely. You have any other guesses, Justin?
Yeah, so like if we're on the subject of like potentially updates, up-reses, new versions of it, I feel like if you're going to have a chance to release an update to an old Fire Emblem game, well, this console is still the hotness. Now's a great time for it. I mean, I feel like it was, these are the sort of directs where we got like the Advance Wars 1+2 remake and things like that announced. So like that could be a really cool thing to carry folks going forward. I think on the third party front, I'd have to like basically look at output and timelines on some of the studios that they work with on the third party to see when things seem about due. But I definitely think some are. In fact, actually, one of the things that I looked at in show prep on the Fire Emblem subject was how long ago was Engage? That was only 2 years ago. Those are usually at least a 3-year turnaround.
But we know
more.
they sat on Engage for at least a year. That thing was done, and they did not put it out. So there could be one in the wings ready to go.
Yeah. But something to that effect to me seems plausible, at least.
I just had one right here. I'm shocked I didn't think of before. Ace Attorney 7. I think totally
I was going to ask if you thought any adventure type games were potentially due.
I think that. So that remember that Capcom Mega Leak from a few years ago where we got timelines for just everything, and most of it turned out to be accurate. And one of the last dominoes we're waiting for to fall on that thing is Ace Attorney 7. And that whole timeline was before COVID. Everything changed. Stuff was pushed back a few years, but they've re-released every Ace Attorney game now. This console generation. They're all out. All that's left is for a new one, and I could see that showing up at a Nintendo Direct in February. So, that'd be the first new one in a really long time, which would be really cool too. So, I think you have a show. I think you have a show there that we would walk away from and be like, yeah, that was the last Direct of a generation, so it wasn't the best, but it was still solid. So.
Might not buy any of these things, but I'm glad they exist.
Yeah. Oh, you'd be there for a Fire Emblem remake of one that never came out here.
They could not take my money fast enough.
Yeah, that'd be great. What if they took out all the strategy and replaced it with romance?
Wait, are you calling for a Three Houses remake? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, you never know with Fire Emblem these days.
Yeah, okay, I don't know if I'm ready for the next Smoocher Student Simulator. I mean, maybe speaking of Capcom, it's been long enough since we had a Monster Hunter Stories with a big mainline title coming out. That could be a fun time.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the most pulling out of my butt random conjecture of conjecture. So please don't take anything by that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If so, I'm going to backtrack and say no, I knew all along, and please give me points for Internet Cloud or something.
Yeah,
about those Internet Cloud points. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to redeem them
into the eShop
on the My Nintendo store for like Donkey Kong keychains.
My man.
Like that.
Yep, exactly.
Speaking of, there's DK keychains of his redesign on the Nintendo store now. I almost bought it, but I held back. Yeah. Okay, let's move on and from Direct talk and talk a little bit about what we've been playing lately Nintendo-wise, which is something we don't ever really do on this show unless it's a new thing. So, yeah, why not? Why not? Justin, what have you been up to?
So I have been plugging away a little bit more at Thousand Year Door. Haven't had as much time as I'd like, but I'm basically going through the first dungeon right now. I have what's the young turtle gentleman? What's his name?
Koops.
Yeah, I've got Koops in my party now, and I had forgotten how different your different companions make playing. Play. It's significantly different, and the way that you kick them across the ground and how they affect enemies. It's really smart. There's just so much of a rock paper Koopa effect to how you take on different enemies and things like that. And when you start incorporating items like POW blocks and the importance of getting enemies out of the air, knocking them over, more enemies having things like spikes on their head, it's a much more cerebral RPG than I think I had remembered in my head. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but it was just a very simplistic RPG. And it's not too crazy, but there's enough going in that you need to look at the screen for a second and have a little game plan before battle start, and that's awesome. So I really like that. I've been having a good time with that. I've mentioned 13 Sentinels a couple of times on here. I just did a little bit of traveling, running from Portland to Seattle and back just for a day job thing. And that is my travel game. And so anytime I'm on a train or an airplane, I'm playing through that. So I did a little bit more of that. It's a very, very cool strategy game. I really would love a sequel to that, or I wish I'd gotten DLC, or in particular, it's I think 75% visual novel and like 25% gameplay. And the visual novel stuff is cool and trippy and mind-bendy. But I love the gameplay so much. I wish there was just a lot more of it. And so I keep doing this thing where it's like, all right, I'm going to force myself to get all the visual novel stuff all the way caught up to like a certain point before I treat myself with letting myself go do some battles for a while. Yeah. And then I exhaust those, and then I go back to do more visual novel stuff. So I was able to treat myself to a couple of battles, but now I'm back in the story stuff. So that will probably go untouched until like I'm on an airplane to PAX East or something.
You should check out Unicorn Overlord when you're done.
I want to.
I hear that's even more gameplay focused from the same team.
Yeah. I that is one that is very much on like my to-do list.
Cool.
Once I finish a couple of things.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you playing?
I've been up to 3 different things. That I've been just enjoying this drought of a new Nintendo game and not having to play anything for work right now. Just playing a bunch of old stuff and. Yeah, it's been really fun to dive into some franchises, some entries I've missed out on or haven't visited in a while. So the only core Metroid game I haven't, of the 2D ones I haven't finished, is Metroid Fusion. So I am playing Metroid Fusion right now on Switch Online because it got added to the GBA library last year at some point, and what a great game. It's really, really good. So this is Metroid 4. It's the follow-up to Super Metroid that came out famously the same day as Metroid Prime, which is just unbelievable to think about.
Different Metroid.
Anyone ever doing that ever again. That's crazy. That's why'd they do that? But Metroid Fusion is commonly known as one of the more hand-holdy entries, specifically in the 2D ones. It is easily the most hand-holdy, and I think that's why I've never gotten past a certain point with it, because the opening area is really frustrating, and you're always going to a navigation room, so your computer will tell you what to do next. They'll tell you exactly where to go. They'll tell you what room to go to even in the first area. And it just really feels like baby's first Metroid. And I wasn't into it. I've never gotten over that hump. But I was playing it I'm playing it with a friend of mine. We're passing the controller back and forth. And once you get past that, it just becomes Super Metroid again. And not to the same quality, but essentially it's just... You still have to go in each area to the nav room, but the objectives become more obtuse and there's less guidance. And basically, it says you need to get to this room, but to get to this room, you need to find a security room to unlock the red doors. But because it's a security room, we can't put that on your map, so good luck. That's the narrative reason for why they're not telling you. And so then you're just in these very condensed Metroid-y areas hunting down this secret room using all the abilities you're finding along the way, and it just becomes really bite-sized, and you can see, as Nintendo does, they thought about translating this to a handheld. How are we going to take Super Metroid and make it more digestible in bite-sized chunks for a portable system? And they did that here, and it's really, really, really good, and the boss fights are brutally difficult and really fun, and the areas are great. The whole thing takes place on a spaceship, which is different than any other Metroid game, which are all on a planet or multiple planets. So I don't like kind of the mechanical vibe as much as something like Super Metroid, going into the depths and not knowing what you're going to see next. But yeah, it's great. It's really, really a good time, and it's one that for years I didn't like, just because I think the first hour is not good, but I'm glad I pushed through because, yeah, it's an awesome Metroid game.
So I have gone down this rabbit hole because, like, I'm a lore guy. I love lore.
Yeah.
And, like, so my latest, like, put on YouTube while I make dinner or do the dishes has been Metroid lore. I've been going really deep down a Metroid lore hole. And I will say it's interesting too because and it's not on purpose, but I kind of like when this happens is a lot of it's contradictory. Like a lot of, a lot of the story was like the story is very limited in the early games, and some of it was expressed in things like the instruction manuals. Some of it is lies, like the very first one famously like tells you that like you're a boy android of some kind, and you are not. And then a lot of it came out in like a serialized like comic book series, effectively that they would put in, like Nintendo Power, and it like. Cool. Some things have been updated, some things have been retconned. Sometimes it's not clear if the retcon is like the official story or not. And I love that about it, actually. I love that it's a fragmented story. Like it kind of vibes with some of the things I love about the Zelda timelines and things like that, where it's like there's no clear answers. Here's some explanations. They might not actually work or be valid, and so there's a lot of room left up to interpretation, and some stuff was retconned, like the Chozo statues existed for a long time before Samus's relationship with the Chozo became part of her backstory and things like that, and like, you know, she was always like a bounty hunter, but what does that actually mean? Like, is she just like going to the space post office and seeing a face on a wanted poster? No, not really. It's all very different, and like Metroid Fusion, for example, is one of the like really, really important games from a story standpoint, and how that all fits in. And it is, like some people say that video game story doesn't matter. I think it does matter, and on top of it, like video game lore, I think is just so fun. It is so much fun to dig through that stuff.
Yeah, I just think I'm glad you brought up the story specifically, because Metroid does have, it's one of the only Nintendo series. Oh, gosh, is it like the only core Nintendo series?
Yeah.
I guess Pikmin technically actually has a through line across all the
like,
games.
Literally a fully connected like narrative.
Yeah. But Metroid 1 through 5, that's a story. That is a complete story that starts with Metroid 1 and ends with Dread, and you are the same Samus who has the same memories of the previous games. It's not a new Link. It's not whatever the heck's going on with Mario. It's a saga. It is a sci-fi saga, and that's really, really cool. It gets messy with the retro stuff, the Prime trilogy, which takes place after 1, but before the rest. But then there's like 6 Ridleys in the Prime trilogy. It gets a little wacky. Sure, whatever.
Yeah,
but
whatever.
Just the core Metroid story is pretty solid, and that's really cool. And
like 2 exists in response to what happens in 1, and 3 exists in what happens in 2, and it's extremely cool the way that they do that. And I do think what they do a really good job of is, this might be because the games themselves tend to be so limited in the storytelling, is like you figure out what's going on like in the first 30 seconds, and then you don't need to know all that stuff. Like if Super Metroid was your first Metroid, okay, cool, they explain the scenario real quick, and then you're in this spooky, weirdly organic planet, and those guys that look like praying mantises are pirates somehow. Great, that's all I need to know. Let's go. But if you do like to get into it, you can get into it, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it works really well. And then Dread was the first Metroid I ever beat. It was the one where the series finally clicked with me, and I adore that game. It's still my second favorite to Super. But now, having gone back and in a weird order played them all, I played Dread, Zero Mission, Super, Samus Returns, Fusion. So just a horrible order. But it's so cool to see little lines of dialogue in Fusion, which came out in, 2001? Is that one? I think so.
Somewhere thereabouts.
And then 20 years later, it gets paid off in Metroid Dread. That's crazy. There is a direct line. I literally got
you become one of us. I love it. You are Metroid pilled.
Crazy. It's so cool. I don't even want to spoil it for people out there who haven't played Dread, but it's like there's a line in Fusion where it's like, oh, maybe they're doing this because of this, and you're like, oh, that's kind of a throwaway line, and then that thing happens in Metroid Dread, and it's just so cool that they've had this plan forever, and the games sell like crap, so it takes forever to get them approved and actually make them, but they have they chip away, and then finally they convince Nintendo, please let us make Metroid Dread, and they do it, and it's awesome. So yeah, I love Metroid. Can't wait,
and I'm glad you've really come around on this series, and so much of that, like if you've been there for the whole time, it's been awesome. Like the fact that the Spider Ball ability returned when you got like the Magnet Ball in Metroid Prime, or that you could use the like Grapple Beam from Super Metroid and things like that. Like all these little things. It is the series that suffers the least amnesia, which is so funny because every game starts with removing everything from you.
Complete wipe. Yeah, always fun to see how they explain that. But
how's it going to happen this time?
Yeah, I know. Prime 4, we'll do it again. I can't wait to see why.
Can't wait to find out.
Lost it all. Yeah.
She forgot to charge her batteries.
A couple of other things I've been playing. I almost am done with Donkey Kong 94, which I mentioned on last week's show, I think. What a great game. I love that game so much. And it's just so fun to see how Mario's moveset really started there into what it still is today. Like in Donkey Kong 94, if you do the handstand into a triple jump, Mario lands and then he kind of like does a pose. When he lands, he still does that in Mario Odyssey today. When you do the triple jump and he lands, he does that. And everyone thinks this stuff started in Mario 64. It didn't. It started in DK 94, and that's so cool. I just think it's such a cool game, and
Amazing.
yeah, it really informs a lot of what Mario went on to be in 3D. And speaking of Odyssey, I got to 999 moons after 8 years in Mario
You actually
Odyssey.
beat the game, finally.
I did. I'm done for real now. And just every time I pick that game up, it's just I'm reminded at what a masterpiece it is. And I'm just going through, and you enter a warp pipe, and then your platforming is 8-bit Mario grabbing a power moon, and then an 8-bit chiptune version of the You Got a Moon jingle plays. And it's just, oh my gosh. I don't know. There may be better Mario games to come. I'm not sure if there'll ever be a game that celebrates Mario better than Mario Odyssey did. It's just so good at that. It feels like a anniversary title, even though it really wasn't, but it feels like that. And it's just amazing, man. I just love it so much. And I can't believe it's been so long, and we might be on the precipice of finally seeing the next one.
That is so high on my wish list, is for the next 3D Mario. What was your approach to grinding out those last moons that you needed?
Going to IGN.com and using the walkthrough.
Yeah.
Because I only had 30 or so left, and some of them I knew what I needed to do for, but I was at the point, I've been chipping away at this file since October 2017, and I just thought to myself, I can't scour through the entire world redoing every challenge I've already done to see where these moons pop up. So at that point, I just looked them up, and some of them are so insanely ridiculous for you would never know to do these things. So I'm glad that guides writers exist, because I wouldn't have found some of these on my own. It's so good though. It's just awesome. I'm not gonna get all of the costumes though, because that's like 100,000 coins, and I'm not.
They get like psychotically expensive at the end. Yeah.
Yes, they do. There's multiple that cost 10,000 coins, or 9,999, which is the max that you can carry. So, no thanks. I'll pass on that. But otherwise, that's a wrap on Odyssey. Just in time, hopefully, to see the next one pretty soon here. All right, Justin, let's get into our mailbag. Let's do it. EGAD's emails. We've had a lot piling up. You can always email the show, toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com, or hop into our Discord server and go to the EGAD's emails channel to drop a question, or go to Blue Sky at Toadstool Boardroom and leave us a question there. This one comes from Christian, who says, getting excited to buy the Switch 2. Getting a new console is always exciting, and it made me reflect on this question. What was the first game console you bought with your own money? Did you pre-order it? And what games did you get with it? Justin.
I have a bit of a story behind this. So, my brother and I were high school age-ish. I have an older brother. He's a few years older than me. And we got a summer job working on my uncle's boat. It was a old like salmon fishing boat that had been converted to a houseboat, and it was old enough that it needed to get like basically like deep restoration. Like for example, like the planks that make up the deck that you walk on top of the boat, the actual sealant in between every one of those we had to go through with a knife and cut all the way back the entire length of the boat and pull all of that out and then reseal all of those things. So we spent the entire summer working on his boat, and it was like a cool job. I spent a lot of my time down like repainting the engine room and doing things like that. And we were doing it because we were saving our money because we were going to buy the PlayStation 2 that just came out, because I'm a million years old. And so we were doing that. We were working on it, and we were saving up our money. And then we finally had saved up enough money, and we were gonna pull the trigger on it. And then my brother comes home and from like hanging out with one of his buddies, this guy BJ, and he's like, wait, what if we don't buy a PlayStation 2? I'm like, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? He's like, listen, I was at my friend's house, and we were playing this game Halo.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
And, like, trust me when I tell you, we want an Xbox, and we want Halo. And so eventually, he took some convincing, but eventually he talked me into it. He he described it as like, it's kind of like Starship Troopers almost. And so I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And we did, and we bought it, and Halo completely knocked my socks off. And yeah, I had a lot of satisfaction that we spent all summer working on it, and we bought it with our own money. And then first Nintendo console I bought with my own money was the GameCube. First game I got with that one was actually Burnout 2, I think. Either Burnout 2 or 3, which was such an amazingly good time. And then I got Luigi's Mansion and a bunch of Zeldas and all that stuff.
Nice.
But yeah, I will always remember the Xbox as the very first console that I bought with my own money.
And you're still an Xbox guy to this day. You still are playing on your Series X.
I will say that decision to get the Xbox instead of the PlayStation then is probably why I'm in the Xbox ecosystem primarily instead of the PlayStation ecosystem to this day.
And now Forza Horizon 5 is coming to PS5. I don't know if you saw that news today. But
Yeah,
kind of wild.
What a great game. Frankly,
So
good for those people. That game is incredible.
I bring that up, not just to say it, but to segue into my conspiracy theory. I think that game's coming to Switch too, and that's why we didn't get a release date today for the PS5
excellent.
version, because it's coming out on Switch 2 launch day as a Switch 2 launch title. And my main reason for that, one, they just said spring 2025, and they didn't give a date for the PS5 version. And two, the developer that's making the PS5 port is Panic Button, who made the Doom and Doom Eternal and the Witcher ports for Nintendo Switch. So I definitely think they're working on a Nintendo version of this game.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah,
Reading those tea leaves, Tanuki leaves, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, whatever leaves. Yeah, I'm reading them. So I think that's going to be a Switch 2 launch game, which is awesome, by the way. The new Leafs. The Horizon is an amazing game. So yeah, I hope that comes.
Mario
to Switch
Kart Horizon when?
Oh yeah, in 2025. We already saw a glimpse of it. Maybe.
Sure.
I'm fortunate in that I grew up in a Nintendo household, as I've said on the show many times. So my parents were always buying the new Nintendo system for them, and then we would play it with them, right? Like they loved Nintendo. They've been getting every console since the NES when they were in college and saved up for the NES. So no, we were always getting the Nintendo consoles as a family. But the first one I bought myself was the DSi. So I got the DS for Christmas in like 2005 when I'm like 7 years old or whatever. And as most kids' DSs did, the hinge snapped. And so it was broken. And the DSi was really cheap. It was down to like $80. And so I had some allowance saved. And I remember pulling a few hundred weeds to get the extra $10 or whatever to get across the finish line. And I went to Game Crazy at the time. I miss Game Crazy so much. I don't know if you had Game Crazies near you.
We had Funko Land, and that was rad.
With what?
We had Funko Land.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it eventually was absorbed by what would become GameStop.
Oh, okay. Because my Game Crazies were always attached to Hollywood Videos, and it was like the first room
those.
was the
I've seen those,
smaller Game Crazy, and then the
there was like a
back
chain
room
link
was
fence around it or something, if I remember right.
Yes, there always was. Yeah, I remember going to Game Crazy and buying a white DSi for like $79.99 or something like that, like just really cheap for a DS. So yeah, that was the first one I got with my own money. And then I remember in college I bought a PS4 off my friend who was selling it at a pretty discount price. And then I went and I bought the Uncharted collection and MLB The Show 17 with Griffey on the cover, which was awesome. Even though I don't like the show that much, it was awesome to have one with a Mariner on the cover. And Christian's answer is, despite being in my 30s, my first console I purchased was the 3DS. I have an older brother, and I inherited all his old game consoles, so I didn't need to buy my own systems, but when the 3DS was out, I had to get my own because of Smash 4. Of course, I got the red special Smash Brothers Edition one, nice. I shortly thereafter bought a Wii U due to the same game. Wow, okay, so you are one of the few out there that bought both systems for both versions of Smash 4. Yeah, I remember a lot of people thought it was kind of a terrible decision to put that thing on 3DS when no one was buying a Wii U. But awesome. That's a great story. This next question comes from Daniel, who says, with the rumors of notable third-party launch support on the Switch successor, you can tell how old this question is because it's not called the Switch 2 in this question, like Assassin's Creed Mirage and Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm curious what third-party titles you'd like to see come to the new Nintendo platform. Is it possible we'll see a Cyberpunk on Switch 2? What do you think, Justin?
Cyberpunk would be awesome. I love that game. It's one of my favorite immersive RPGs of almost any time. I don't know if it'll handle Monster Hunter Wilds, but Monster Hunter World would be a really cool port that I would love to see.
Don't even say that to me. I can't do it. I can't spend more hours than that when we're 4 weeks away from the next one.
I'm just saying
it'd be awesome.
I think that would be really cool. You've heard me bang the drum for Sea of Thieves, and frankly, I think that's likely. Like Microsoft's going to bring pretty much everything over, so I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
So that What else do I love? Oh, Elden Ring. Yeah. I would love to see Elden Ring and frankly all the new From Software games when their day and date come out for that thing.
Yeah, Elden Ring's a big one that I think will happen. I think that will be kind of the Skyrim moment this time. We had the Skyrim on a plane moment for Switch 1. I think Elden Ring on Switch 2 will be kind of the big, whoa, that's coming to Switch. I think it'll be Elden Ring. I've been saying Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think, is a really nice fit. I felt that way for a long time. I don't know about Rebirth, but at least the first one. Why not? Cyberpunk, I think, makes a lot of sense. We got The Witcher 3 on Switch 1, so why not their next game? They made that thing run on PS4 as it barely could. So we'll see if Switch 2 can handle it, but it'd be awesome. Monster Hunter, you got me thinking about that now. That'd be really, really cool. I think the Star Wars Jedi games would be a lot of fun on Switch. They did a weird kind of last-gen port of Jedi Survivors. There's a PS4 and Xbox One version of that game that exists now. I'm sure that could get going on the Switch too. That'd be fun. But yeah, really, any PS4 level thing. Street Fighter 6 would be awesome on Switch too. Yeah. Pretty much anything
Rivals?
that they're still putting out on PS4.
I'd love to play Rivals on that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Halo the Master Chief Collection.
MCC, baby, let's go.
Yeah, please. I think we all really, really want that. And Forza Horizon 5, mentioned that one. I think that's a really real possibility now.
It's a great fit.
Yeah, anything.
Sit down, knock out a race. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say? Do you make a joke?
No, I'm saying you could just like sit down and knock out a race pretty quickly if you're being portable. And if you're docked and you want to spend all day doing it, like it can do both. Like it fits the modus operandi of the Switch 2.
Yeah, so I think that it's an exciting time waiting to hear what there's going to be, because I think there's going to be a lot. So that's very cool. And then Daniel also asks, prior to the launch of the Switch OLED, there were a lot of rumors about a Switch Pro with more features, faster chipset, etc. Now that all signs seem to be pointing to the Switch successor being a bigger, better version of the... Yep, it is. I'm wondering if the hardware cooks at Nintendo are sitting on years-old plans for a whole new console that shares no relation to the Switch line, but decided against launching that now and instead chose to turn what was once the Switch Pro into the Switch 2 instead. What do you think? Are we essentially getting a mid-gen refresh Nintendo style, or was this always the hardware plan for Nintendo? And a couple people asked this question, so we'll just answer this version of it. Justin, what do you think?
I mean, a little bit of all of the above. If you pay a lot of attention to console releases, you know that what ends up happening is they start pre-planning the next console as soon as one console is out. Yes. And usually what they don't do is they're not building one idea. They'll have a range of them. Like all of these possibilities that people mention, they were probably all in the works at some point. They were probably small committees and teams each exploring different possibility. I'm sure at least written on a whiteboard level there were people sketching out a very different approach to the next console. But what ends up happening and the way that this development works is you whittle down to the ideas that make the most sense. Maybe you go down to a small handful of projects that go into some sort of prototyping or something like that. But there were almost certainly more ideas that they explored that were strange and unusual. Whether or not, and I promise you, they absolutely would have thought of at least considered a Pro model at some point. Yeah. I do think that the rumors around that were largely founded more on what people's expectations were, that people expect a Pro model to exist, that, they definitely were looking at more advanced chipsets and things like that and putting two and two together. But really, when you have a follow-up console that is a more powerful version of what's come before, whether you call it a Pro or a new console is largely semantics and a question of how much time has gone by in between. And so is this a Switch Pro that became a Switch 2? Is there a difference between that and a PS3 and a PS4 and a PS5 or an Xbox One and Series X and S? I think it's all labels, honestly.
Yeah, I think that the Switch OLED is the Switch Pro that didn't get the upgraded hardware, and I feel really confident about that. I think at this stage,
do you think there was potential that it could have had a more powerful chipset at one point?
And then the pandemic hit and the chip shortage started, and it became impossible to get better parts for anything. And Nintendo, I think, pivoted, and I think they scrapped their plans for a Switch Pro, but still launched I think the Switch OLED has everything a Switch Pro was going to have except better internals. It has the bigger screen. It has the OLED display. It has the improved kickstand. It has the Ethernet port in the dock. It has all the stuff people were asking for from a Switch Pro. I think that's what it was. And as for the other part of this question, is there some plan? Are they sitting on a plan for a new console generation? No, I don't think that's how these things work. They may have ideas that they'll return to. If you look at the Switch 2 Joy-Cons that snap onto the side, that's originally what they wanted to do with Switch 1, and they couldn't figure it out. And they developed the rail system. So they came back to it for Switch 2 and made it the snap-on magnets they always wanted to do in the first place. So they definitely have ideas. Maybe they'll incorporate, but no, it takes so much R&D to get these things ready. I don't think they're sitting on anything that they'll use. And technology changes so fast and markets change so fast that you already, when you're developing a console, are throwing a dart at a moving target that's not going to land for 5 years. So no, I don't think something they started planning 7 years ago is going to be relevant in 7 more years when they're ready to replace the Switch 2. So yeah, it's interesting though. Go for it.
I guess the only counterpoint to that is like kind of to your point is like they might have come up with a wacky idea, like something that's not a question of spec.
Maybe
that's a question of like, here's a weird thing we could build that frankly is kind of like, you know, it's not as though Alarma was only possible in the year of our Mario 2024, you know? And so like, yeah, we could see some stuff like that come around. I don't know, you know, something that you might have noticed is like, this generation, Microsoft has actually opted out of the Xbox Pro concept.
Good. Yeah, the PS5 Pro is not appealing at all to that many people, I don't think.
Like, again, if I get one, it'll only be for Monster Hunter. But, like, again, as somebody who is as target audience as a device like that could possibly have, right? And so, like, it wouldn't shock me if the whole concept of a mid-gen refresh is kind of a dinosaur at this point.
Yeah, and they did it once before. I don't know. The Game Boy Color, I never really know how people like to classify that, so I'll ignore that example and just go to mid-gen refresh 3DS to new 3DS.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that really did for them.
Well, and like there was a like slight refresh to the Switch along the way, you may recall. You know, you had to,
the battery
you had to look for the correct boxes and things like that to know which ones you were getting. And so it's not as though they won't revise their hardware, but I would honestly be surprised if in the Switch 2 generation, if they do revise their hardware spec for greater performance over the course of it.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think they'll stick with Switch 2 as Switch 2, and then when they're ready, just call it Switch 3. Why not? Like you were saying, it's all a label, and a heck of a lot more people are going to buy a Switch 3 than a Switch 2 Pro. So why not just call it that? Yeah, but I don't think that this is... I don't think this is a plan for a Switch Pro they kicked 4 years down the road and renamed. I think this is the successor, and I think the games will show that. There will be games that are not possible to play on Switch 1 that we will play on Switch 2, and a Switch Pro, they wouldn't do that. You wouldn't splinter it with exclusive software. They did that a couple times with new 3DS. Those games sold horribly. They sold so poorly. Like the Xenoblade Chronicles port, who bought that? Nobody. So... yeah, they won't do that again. This next one comes from Red, who says, hello, Boardroom. Happy New Year. 2 quick questions. Do you guys think the Nintendo Switch 2, we will finally get games closer to always being at 60 FPS? Or do you think this new console will struggle? And then Red's second question is Pro model. We just answered that. So just the first question, because we already talked about a Pro model. What do you think about 60 FPS, Justin?
No. Goodness, no.
No.
Like, yeah, and I would say it bums me out, but it's like, it's tough. You know, even the PS5 Pro, which is the most powerful console that's out on the market, like, you have to choose through different modes based on like the performance that you want. Like, if we're assuming that this is going to be playing like, you know, current games, things that are available elsewhere and things like that, which I think is reasonable, there's going to be plenty of times where we're not going to hit 60. And I will say from Nintendo's first party assortment, I don't think that they've ever shown that that's particularly important to them. I will say I'm one of those gamers who, for the longest time, was like, I don't care about frame rates. It doesn't matter. It's like I'm an old man. I grew up. If I was getting 7 FPS in some games, great. That's fine.
That's all you needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
One, technically, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I play the old Ninja Turtles games, and sprites would disappear for seconds at a time on screen. It's fine. Now, I do appreciate the buttery smoothness that you get out of a higher frame rate, and I think 60. I think 60 will be the target. I think that's what everything is going to be trying to achieve. And then when it comes to tuning and optimization, it'll be to try and keep things as around that as possible when they're higher spec games, and lower spec stuff will run better. But no, I think that 60 FPS, especially for new stuff, will largely be aspirational and expect a lot of variable frame rates.
What's so weird is that people always talk about, is the hardware going to struggle? Is it going to be the console that struggles? Some games run at smooth 60 and have no issues at all. Mario Kart 8 is a gorgeous game that runs at 60 FPS with 1 or 2 players. And then you have Pokemon, and people always say if the hardware can support it. No, that's the developer's fault. Yeah. That is that game's issue. So it's going to be variable. I don't know. I say it doesn't bother me. It's starting to more. And I don't know why. It's just Link Between Worlds runs at 60 FPS on 3DS, and that's an awesome part of that experience. You just feel very immersed in that world. And even if it was locked 30, I'd be happy, and then Echoes of Wisdom can't do anything close to that. And I think that is one of many reasons I like that game a lot less. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that it'll be game by game. Next 3D Zelda, I bet money it's going to be 30. I don't think that's going to be a 60 FPS game like the next open world one.
But if it's a buttery smooth 30 instead of if we go from 30 being the aspirational cap and dipping below that to 30 being really stable across the board, I'll take that. That's an improvement for me. I
agree.
And it is also the sort of thing that you have to pick your battles, You can do block 60 with less going on. You can do less action, less effects, less draw distances. When Monolith makes their next game, they'll get as much performance out of that console as any team possibly can. But do I want them necessarily to be fully committed to 60, or do I want them to continue pushing the boundaries on geography and draw distances and skyboxes and making these massive worlds around you? If I'm given the choice between the two, I don't know that I need it to be a lock 60.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, locked 30 would be nice, because the amount of games that dip even below that, it's a bummer. It's a bummer right now, so I really hope that's...
Don't get it twisted. I would definitely like for 30 to be the floor.
Yeah, please. Yeah, this time around.
I'm not trying to say frame rates don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This one comes from Thomas, who says, what can we expect from Nintendo to commemorate Mario's 40th anniversary? How about a new console and a new Mario Kart to go with it, and hopefully a 3D Mario along the way? That's what I think.
I think a mention at a direct near the end of the year, because they mostly forgot about it, and now they're like, oh shoot, we should acknowledge it.
I don't even know if they will. I think that for 35, they got a logo. They did a whole direct. They did a ton of stuff.
A logo. We're going to get a logo on things throughout the year. A logo will just show up from time to time.
They sold Super Mario 64 for 6 months and then stopped. They made a Mario 35 Battle Royale and then stopped. So they did a lot. But Nintendo celebrates anniversaries when it's convenient for them to. And what I mean by that is when they have nothing else going on. When they need a big PR story or something to drum up interest for the year, that's when they'll roll out the red carpet for an anniversary. And 2021 was exactly that. Oh, it's Mario's 35th. We have no other games, so here's 3D World, and here's Mario 35, and this Mario Kart AR game, and they go hard on it, but I don't think it's that uncommon for times to just pass where they don't really talk about it. The company that's consistently the best at celebrating an anniversary for Nintendo is HAL with Kirby. They never miss an anniversary. They're always celebrating with games and collections and stuff like that. But Nintendo, I don't know. I don't know how big of a deal it'll be. I think that if they're talking about a 3D Mario, they'll definitely tie it to that, and Koizumi or whoever will introduce it and say, it's Mario's 40th anniversary, and we're celebrating with this game. But I don't think you get as much of a rollout as they did for 35, because this year's big enough already. They have a new console coming out, so I don't know if they go as hard as they did last time. But a new 3D Mario is better than all that other stuff they did last time. That's all I really need, so I hope that's what we get. Rob asks, big fan of the show. I think you all bring a great mix of fandom and thoughtful analysis and critiques. Thank you, Rob. Rob says, I recently played Aria of Sorrow on the Castlevania Advance Collection. I've played a lot of the Metroid games, but never a Castlevania game, and I absolutely loved it. In fact, it's now not only my favorite GBA game, but my favorite in the whole Metroidvania genre. So my question for the boardroom is, have you ever played an older game that has totally upended your personal rankings of a genre or a console? Best wishes and keep up the great work. What do you got?
I mean, I was like, look at everything Logan has been saying for the last 2 weeks about the games he's playing.
Yeah, it's Super Metroid is my boring answer. I played that and yeah, it was just awesome. But I don't know. I'm not sure of something else that comes to mind.
What about Donkey Kong 94?
Oh yeah, it's awesome. It's not my favorite. Yeah. It probably is my favorite Game Boy game, actually. It probably is the best Game Boy game I've ever played.
Even if it's not your number one Donkey Kong at this point, it absolutely shuffles the rankings when something like that pops in.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the best besides the retro country games. I know I have a weird Donkey Kong ranking because I think the country games are bad, the old ones. That's why I wasn't on the retrospective. I wasn't invited to talk about Donkey Kong with these guys. I don't like those games.
It's because we couldn't find your official playlist of your top 10 Donkey Kong games.
Oh yeah, I guess I have to make that. Yeah,
gonna have to make one over on.
But yeah, I love revisiting old Nintendo stuff because so much of it holds up. And actually. Mm-hmm. To Rob's point, I got to play these Castlevania games. I've never played a Castlevania, and I'm very excited to because I love Metroidvanias, and I'm excited to see the second half of that horrible portmanteau that we always use for this genre. So I'm excited to try it out.
I hate that portmanteau because Castlevanias became Metroid-likes eventually, and they. And that's all that happened. Metroids have always been Metroids. That drives me nuts. And that's one of my old man yells at cloud kind of things. This one's a little bit tougher for me just because I've been around for so long. And I've been a hardcore gamer for about as long as Mario has existed. Mm-hmm. So, there's not that many old, big games that I missed, honestly. Probably the closest might have been when they released Fire Emblem, I think it was Dragon Shadow for the DS, which was like a remake of the first one where we met Marth. So just figuring out where that fit in with my Fire Emblem fandom was interesting. But no, I mean, I'm just old and know that my taste in video games is fairly linear with the passage of time because I was there for it.
Yeah, that's fair. No, it's Earthbound's another one for me. I didn't play till I was a teenager, and then that's my favorite RPG besides Dragon Quest XI, which is more modern. But that's another one. And then I don't know, Link to the Past isn't one of my favorite Zeldas, even though I played that later. It just didn't hit for me the same.
Terrible.
Super Mario World I love. It's not my favorite Mario, so I don't know. I'll have to think more on that. But Super Metroid is the easy answer right now. It's one of the best games I've ever played, and I played it last year. So
It is a timeless masterpiece.
It's amazing, yeah. I want a remake so bad. I talked about that on MVC this week. I just want a Super Metroid remake. I think it would be awesome.
I don't know what you would improve in a remake. I don't think newer
just the controls. That's it. I don't think it controls that well. The wall jumping and the space jumping.
You have such a small window to pull off a lot of those moves.
Yeah, and
you have to be super precise.
You could say just get good or whatever, but I just think that's the only thing holding it back from a lot more people playing it and loving it is that there's some techniques it forces you to pull off that are hard. They're really hard to do, and I think that's all it needs.
Yeah, a couple little bigger windows here and there wouldn't be the worst thing. But it's when it comes to something being a masterpiece, and this goes back to review philosophy and things like that, like a 10 out of 10. It doesn't mean it's perfect. I promise you, not every single brushstroke on the Mona Lisa came out exactly how it was intended. That's not what made it a masterpiece, right? It's the picture that it formed. It's the sum of all of it. So if they did do some kind of re-release and they did make some tweaks to it, I'm not somebody who would get the pitchforks out. But by the same token, I really don't know that there's much you could improve on. I don't think newer, shiny, smooth graphics would be better than how it looked before. I don't know that a new CD quality soundtrack would be superior to what we heard out of the chip and things like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Because it is so timeless to me.
Yeah, but I don't think the remake's for you, and I don't mean that as an offense. It's for teenagers who grew up with Nintendo Switch that have never played it. That need to play the game. People that played Metroid Dread and, unlike me, didn't go back and replay all the old ones. And I think that it's a barrier to entry for some people. Just it's Samus. I'm sorry, Samus doesn't feel that good to control in Super Metroid. She just doesn't. It's of the 5 core Metroid games. If you take 1 and 2's remakes of Zero Mission and Samus Returns, Super Metroid feels the worst to control, and that's a shame because it's the best one. So I think that just also I agree that making it look like Metroid Dread wouldn't necessarily be better, but it'd be awesome to have both. It'd be awesome because Super Metroid would still exist. It'd be awesome to have the original and this shiny...
I would love, honestly, if they did do something like that, do it like they did with the like Halo Anniversaries and stuff, where like you hit a button and it switches between old graphics and old sound and new graphics and new sound.
I love that stuff.
Seamlessly.
Yeah.
I could be on board for that.
Now you're cooking. Yeah, let's see it. Super Metroid, Mercury Steam, October 13th, 2026, Nintendo Switch.
And they're going to announce it at a Nintendo Direct next week.
Oh my gosh, we'd lose it. Yeah, that'd be great. This one comes from Reality Tim, which we've talked about a bit on the show, so I don't know how long we'll stick on it. But Tim says, recently I've been thinking ahead to the next Mario Kart. When it launches on the Switch successor next year, how about on the Switch 2 this year, would you rather it does so in a 100% complete state with all tracks, modes, and characters available to unlock in the base game? Or would you prefer if it launches with a lower number of tracks and characters, with Nintendo adding more every 3 months or so via DLC? And what do you think is their plan? And Justin and I specifically have had many conversations, I feel like in just 2-person shows without Chris, about the next Mario Kart and about Nintendo's live service push with this franchise. And so the answer I'm sticking with is kind of both. I don't see a world where Nintendo puts out a Mario Kart, especially following in 8's footsteps, that feels like it lacks content. I think that it will feel content complete out of the box on day one, but I also think they will add tracks to it for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So I think that's a lot to ask for, but this is going to be one of the biggest sellers in Nintendo history if all goes well, so I think they're going to give it that treatment.
Yeah, I think it should be robust from day one. But at the same time, I don't need, 64 Grand Prix to drive through right away or anything like that. But as long as it can feel feature complete right from the get-go, and somebody who, let's say for whatever reason, doesn't have online and things like that, and is going to play it purely off the disc, like can do all those things, I think that's a good situation. But I absolutely expect that it is going to be a platform. And it was a platform in this generation, and it's one that wasn't intended to be, and just sort of became one. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to plan on that from the get-go. I don't think they're foolish enough to put out something that is threadbare expect people are going to expect that to go over. But yeah, like if the new one drops day one with half the content that is currently Mario Kart 8, I am perfectly satisfied.
Which is what Deluxe had when it dropped, right? It doubled in content with the Booster Course Pass. Yeah, we're talking 48 tracks. I'd even take 32, which is what... Because I think they're going to be bigger. I think it's going to be different. There's going to be some sort of hook that is going to make this one stand out. So if it's like 32 tracks, but there's something different about them, a ton of characters, great online, and a promise of more to come, I'm happy with that. I think it sounds awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. I can't wait. I'm so psyched for a new Mario Kart. It's going to be so great. This next one comes from GCat99, who says, if you could pick one Nintendo game to get a remake with the budget or resources similar to FF7 Remake, what would it be? We've had this question before. We floated Ocarina of Times, other things like that. My answer's kind of changed because, budget resources similar to Final Fantasy VII doesn't necessarily mean same like style where they're trying to retell the story in a different way. I think Rebirth is not good. It was my biggest disappointment of last year. But if I'm just talking about like a mega expensive, gorgeous remake of a classic Nintendo game, Super Metroid, that's what I just said
about
I wanted. Yeah, I want an Earthbound remake that just looks amazing. It doesn't need that budget though. It's a much smaller. I want it to stay small and cute and quaint, like Link's Awakening. Earthbound would be perfect. So I don't know. I struggle with this. Justin, do you have a go-to answer?
Yeah, it's always going to be an earlier Zelda for me. And again, like games, I do consider them largely timeless, but I would love to see what they could do with it. Like, let's say you took A Link to the Past and turned it into a massive, meaty, detailed 3D adventure like what we've seen from them recently. That would be really cool. And I love the story of A Link to the Past. It's got such a cool backstory with the sages and the imprisoning war, and the way that comes back. And it's got really cool twists and turns along the way. And just when you feel like you're potentially going to be victorious and getting smacked down, it would be such a cool one to see, like, realize. Like, and I wouldn't want them just to, like, make it look like Echoes of Wisdom or anything like that, right? Like, I would want it to be a modern 3D take on it. The reason why something like Twilight Princess isn't my answer is because I think doing that to that game just wouldn't, frankly, enhance it as much, because it looked great and was already super cinematic and cool and did all this great stuff. So, like, I'd want to go further back. I think on the subject of Metroids, I think Metroid 2 would be a cool candidate for that too, because it's just a giant pain in the butt to play, and they frankly made, like, some bad gameplay design decisions on it that, like, other than just being on the Game Boy, that it's kind of a drag. And if you could Metroid Dread that, and basically, like, if you rebuild it from scratch, fixed a lot of the gameplay stuff with it, the whole idea of, like, playing a Metroid game and going to a planet of Metroids, I think it's really neat, and a cool concept and stuff. So, like, that could be a fun one. And of course, like, I'll never not bang the drum for some old Fire Emblems getting, like, completely remade and redone. And actually, one that's not that old, but I would love to see get a port, would be Awakening.
Yes, I actually agree with that a lot. I think Awakening it's a classic. It's awesome. It's 13 years old now. It's the game that saved the franchise.
I was gonna say, it's literally what saved the franchise. Like, it's so funny. Like, Fire Emblem was, for those who weren't paying attention a dozen years ago, it was such a niche franchise just for the biggest stupid nerds like me. And kind of similar to Advance Wars, it never sold well. It was something that was probably on life support on more than one occasion, and that came out and it was so big and so successful. It literally took this from being a niche title to a major first party title. That's an event when they come out now.
No, totally. I don't know if I want to say it's one of the most important games in Nintendo history. That feels like a stretch, but in recent history, absolutely. Like, it's a major franchise for them now. And Awakening's such a cool story, because it's one where Intelligent Systems basically was given the money to do one more and say, this is it. This is the farewell to the series. They didn't make it to try and get it to sell like crazy. They just made the Fire Emblem game they wanted to make with one last shot, right? If you're told this is your final project, what would you do with it? And they made that game that then kind of launched the series into what it is now. So cool.
Which is really funny, because that's effectively the story of the very first Final Fantasy. And that's literally why it's named that, is because this is it. We get to make one more game. This is our Final Fantasy. And so this is what we're going to make.
Of them.
And now here we are. Fire Emblem seems to have gone through a similar thing.
On your Metroid point, I mean, I have to say it. Samus Returns already is the ground-up remake of Metroid 2, but it's on the 3DS.
Again, you know, I just have a blind spot for a lot of the portable titles.
Like, it's just a shame. That was the
how long ago was that?
That was 2017, so that was 8 years ago, and that was the poster child of, this was announced when the Switch was already out, and it's like that monkey paw curling up. Oh, you're remaking Metroid 2, but it's on the system I don't want to play anymore. And that game made some weird choices about Metroid 2. I feel like the definitive version of Metroid 2 is still like AM2R, which is hard to find these days, the fan remake. But yeah, they should give another crack to Metroid 2. And then to Link to the Past, I agree, it'd be cool. But I get hung up personally with the Zelda picks, because it's like, okay, A Link to the Past in 3D with some slight story changes. You're just like talking about every Zelda at that point. Oh, it's Ocarina of Time, right? Like, they're so similar. Like, talking about, remake Ocarina of Time, but make it darker and bigger, and he turns into a wolf, and you go, stop. Like, it's a fine line to walk. At what point's it just a new Zelda game?
Yeah, I mean, I would take that, but and I will say there are. I mean, there's so many beats to that game that are unique to it, and like even the opening sequence, like the rainstorm and the mystery and waking up and not knowing what's going on and hearing these voices and finding, was it your your dad, your uncle, whatever, like, as far as you know, dead in the sewers, basically giving you a sword and like saying, hey, like, you have to do this because I can't. Oh, absolutely exquisite. And there is a reason why, frankly, so many that came after just ripped off Link to the Past. Like it is the prototype. It is the blueprint for all of that. Everything was like, frankly, retelling that story with some twists and turns along the way. So like, F it, let's just tell the story.
Yeah.
Now that we can.
This has to be beat to beat to still be considered a Link to the Past, because the last time they tried to remake A Link to the Past, they said, oh, let's just make this a sequel, and then they made A Link Between Worlds, which started as a remake to Link to the Past in development and didn't happen. But it'd be cool. Turning into a bunny in 3D, sure.
I was literally trying to think, what would the bunny look like?
Yeah. I don't know what my final pick is. It's hard to make a true call. Oh, actually, I think Mario 64 needs a remake. I actually think that's my pick. I think that game controls like crap now.
I was going to say, I think it plays worse than people pretend it does or realize. It's kind of rough to play.
And just, spoilers for Mario Odyssey. Sorry, you've had 8 years, but just going to Peach's Castle at the end of that thing and just that initial feeling of, no way, did they remake Mario 64 as the bonus oh no, but it's just boss battles again. Like that was that planted the seed in my brain for years that this game needs a remake. Just keep the level design the same, the stars exactly the same. I know 64 DS exists. That's not what I'm talking about here. Just remake Mario 64, but make it control like Odyssey does, and I think that game would be way better than it is right now. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we got 2 left here. Chad asks, if you could be in charge of Nintendo for one day, what is one thing you would do at the company? And Chad says that he would greenlight an official English localization of Mother 3 to be released on Nintendo Switch Online. Great pick, Chad. I don't think anyone would have an issue with that in the Nintendo community. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it would probably have to... This premise also comes with a lot of legal authority, because I would imagine there's a lot... Like, there's more than just Nintendo doesn't want to make Mother reasons for why we don't have more of those games out here. So I think that's understandable. If I could be in charge of Nintendo for a day and I could basically call any shot that I wanted to, oh boy, that would be a tough one. There's all the imagined remakes and re-release, which you've talked about at length, like giving my Twilight Princess or my Wind Waker or my Path of Radiance or things like that. I would love to see those things go forward. I would write a single memo, and we're assuming that nobody can undo these things, and I would say the Zelda movie is not moving forward. Instead, we're making a Zelda anime.
That's a good pick.
Either by Studio Ghibli or by the folks who made Castlevania.
There you go. That is a good answer. Yeah. Because when I think about my choices, like, you could say greenlight all these projects. Yeah. What if you're sinking them? What if these things don't sell, right? You don't want to do anything that's too crazy of an impact, but you want to get some things in motion that you want to see get done. So Zelda anime is a great one. Like, if I was just going crazy and doing whatever, I would say, okay, Retro, the second you finish Metroid Prime 4, you're making your Tropical Freeze sequel that you deserve to make, which would be great. Kid Icarus Uprising, obviously. Bring back F-Zero GX. But no, I'm really a simple man. Remakes. Yeah, just remake it all. I'm really a simple man, though, and I would just ask for, like, 3 things. I would ask for... add Tears of the Kingdom to the Nintendo Music app. That would take 10 seconds. And I would ask, make the Echoes of Wisdom amiibo you didn't make for some reason to round out that collection. And put Twilight Princess on Switch. There you go. That's what I want.
All right. If you get 3 wishes, I'm going to take 2 more as well.
Okay.
All right. These are going to be so just and specific. Dear listener, these are of no value to you whatsoever, but you're going to have to come along with me for this ride. So my other one, Nintendo is rebuying the Seattle Mariners so we can have some proper ownership for this baseball team.
That's so good. I never thought of that. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yep. Nicely done.
And then number 2, henceforth, going forward, we're going back to how they used to be. It is Princess Toadstool and King Koopa, and I will not hear otherwise.
Oh my god. Bring back Wart while you're at it. Just bring everybody back. Okay, Princess Toadstool and King Koopa.
And King Koopa.
Yeah, I can get on board with Princess Toadstool, but not King Koopa. He's king of the Koopas, but he's Bowser. Okay, but it's your day. It's your day.
My day.
I'm not gonna.
It's my day. You're toiling away in the museum setting up the pitching machine. You don't get a vote in this.
Oh yeah, I'm revamping the Nintendo Museum. I'm in charge of Nintendo for one day. I'm letting all the secrets out. I'm making them public.
You are opening the vault. You are declassifying 100 and some years of history.
Yeah, I wouldn't become hated at all internally if I did that for one day. Yeah, they'd probably delete my Nintendo account the next day.
Or take everything away from me.
Yeah, they would delete me. Yeah. And our last question comes from Harry, who says, "Hey, Ninfriendos, what's a game?" That's not this show. We don't really have a name, do we? Yeah, we're because we're chairman, but I don't know what our listeners are called.
Shareholders.
Shareholder. I thought that. I actually did think that a few weeks ago. Shareholders. That's so boring. Hey, shareholders, so what's a game for you that instantly transports you to days of Thanksgiving past? I have a weird answer. We'd always go to my uncle and aunts for Thanksgiving, or they'd come to our place. It was kind of an alternating thing. And I just really remember one year my uncle had gotten Sonic and the Secret Rings on Wii. Terrible game. Horrible game, and it was on my Christmas list for that year, and so I played it like a little bit in advance at my uncle's house before then Christmas came later that year, and then they ended up getting me that for Christmas. So I just remember playing Sonic and the Secret Rings on Thanksgiving and thinking it was great at the time, but what did I know? I didn't know anything, and that game is awful.
I'm gonna throw two things out there real quick. One is Nintendo, one is non-Nintendo. I'll do the non-Nintendo first and briefly. When my wife and I were like younger adults, we would always do what we call Friendsgiving. So we would have friends over for a friend's Thanksgiving dinner. We would all wear fancy sweaters. We would get drunk on wine. It was great. And we would always, this was back in the Xbox 360 era, and they had that really great visualizer built in. And so I often associate like Thanksgiving dinner, which is the Xbox music and the visualizer that it would do on the screen while you did that. The other one for me, though, is Super Mario RPG, because I have very distinct memories of it being Thanksgiving or around Thanksgiving time, all the families coming to my little tiny Western Montana home for Thanksgiving dinner. And I remember there being like a big, a specific year, a big thunderstorm and rainstorm. And my brother was like the next town over going shopping because it was such a small town. You can't really like do like school shopping. And so he needs like new clothes or whatever. And like the building got hit by a tornado that he was in.
Oh my gosh.
Like he was fine. He just lost power and stuff. But I every time I play Super Mario RPG, like specifically when you fight Croc the first time early in the game, that puts me exactly there where there's like lightning like cracking through the sky and all this crazy weather and family and all this hustle and bustle all around. And I'm like, and this was like my first turn-based RPG, and so like trying to figure out how to do that stuff. Every single time I play that game and I get to that part, or when you fight Mac in the town, like all early stuff, I am absolutely transported back to early 90s Montana.
Nice. Cool. There's always a new Mario RPG story with you. I don't think we're nearly close.
It's a very influential game to me.
Yeah. All right, that is it. We did it. We're out of backlog questions in listener emails, so thank you. Thank you, shareholders, for your patience.
The only type of backlog I'll ever be able to clear.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only one. And that is another episode of the Toadstool Boardroom in the books. We're a weekly Nintendo show, usually here on Thursdays. Friday this week had to delay recording. I think we're just a little less extra, so we had to build up some more motivation to record this week. But Fridays this week, YouTube video version, and check out audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen to your shows. Find us on Blue Sky at Toadstool Boardroom. Justin, where can people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky as well. Just look for KOREAS. You'll see me pop up. I got nothing to promote. I'm just there.
It's just there. Yeah, we're all chilling this week. There's nothing going on. Hopefully a direct next week and we can talk about some stuff. Yeah. You can also email the show toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com to get our new backlog of EGADS emails started. You can find me on Blue Sky at Logan J. Plant. I don't think I have anything to promote either. Just like go play DK94, even though you can't on Switch. that's what I do at Nintendo. Put DK94 on Switch Online. That's another one that I would do. But yeah, I don't know. I should have some stuff coming up in the next few weeks, but nothing right now. Find the updates on Chris's Kitchen online at Shrives93. But for now, that's all the time I got. I got to get back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS. Have a great week. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time right back here in the Toadstool Boardroom.